Meghan Markle's new show on Netflix, With Love Meghan, has been creating a lot of buzz. Like everything that she does, a lot of reactions towards her are always so polarized. It's either people like her or just don't like her, and this is exactly what makes her and her name newsworthy. And aside from the gossip that you're always hearing about her, there's so much that you can learn from Meghan Markle as a business brand. This is what we're going to be exploring in today's episode. Welcome to Monetized Attention. I'm Jepkendagor, and this podcast helps you to become your dream by defining your own opportunities, learning from successful brands, and understanding the attention economy. One of the key lessons that you can learn from Meghan Markle as a brand is that whether you like her or not, it doesn't really matter. But one thing that is very clear is that attention is currency. And ever since she stepped on the global limelight, everything that she has done has been newsworthy. A lot of times she's getting a lot of negativity. There's always a lot of backlash around her. Even when she doesn't do anything, she's also doing something wrong. But this just goes to show that she's someone that garners a lot of attention. We're currently living in a world where attention is currency. This is why a lot of journalists were using Meghan Markle's name to make a lot of money, because she's definitely a personality that a lot of people have a lot of interest in. But it got to a point where she decided she wanted to have the control of her own narrative. What she has done is to create a media business using her own name. She started with a podcast and now this lifestyle show on Netflix. And of course, there's some people who have a problem with this. They're saying she wanted privacy. Why is she doing all of this? She's taking advantage of the people's interest in her to create business. That is what comes with the attention economy. What we can really learn here is that once you have attention, you can actually create your own opportunities very easily. And of course, if you're someone who is in business, you understand this very well. You can't sell something if people do not know about the product that you're selling. It doesn't matter whether it's a B2B business, whether it's a B2C business, you always have to think about how to reach the people that you are trying to sell your product to. And if you're someone that is employed in a company, this also applies to you. Because one thing they actually never tell you is that working hard is not the only thing that you need to be doing at your work. People also need to know what you're doing and how you're contributing to the company for you to get promotions and sometimes for you to get those networking opportunities with the important people in the company. Basically, you need to be an attention seeker. And I know this is always being used to try and shame people, but the world that we're living in today, being an attention seeker is one of the key drivers of a successful business. The other lesson that is tied to attention is the fact that there is no bad publicity. Despite the fact that Meghan Markle is always getting a lot of bad press, a lot of people are always hating on her, somehow she's always having all these opportunities, $1 million opportunities, to a point that now she's even starting a lifestyle brand. One of the reasons why a lot of people are always afraid of putting themselves out there is the hate that they might get. But the reality is that sometimes haters are actually doing you a favor, because they're the ones that will shout the loudest about you. They're the ones that will go tell people this person is the worst ever. But what they don't know they're doing is that they're actually introducing you to people who might like your work or people who might like you. One of the things that I've always found so interesting, especially when it comes to Meghan Markle herself, is a lot of people are always talking about how they don't like her, but they're the same people that know everything that she does. They're the same people that are always watching the shows that she's producing. I've been seeing comments of people being like, oh, I only watched one episode, I only watched 2 episodes. I don't even understand how someone can create something like this, but you still watched. You say that you don't like this person, but you're still going ahead interacting with every project that she does. This is one of the most interesting things when it comes to consumer behavior that I just find absolutely mesmerizing, because, you know, a lot of people always say one thing, but most times the things that people say is not actually what they do. And that's why when it comes to marketing, most times you don't listen to what people are telling you. The choices that people make, how they make those choices, might be the complete opposite of the perception that they want to sell. That's why instead of listening to people, you should just watch their behaviors, because their actions will tell you more about what they believe in and what they think than what they will tell you. Sometimes hate can actually be something that works very well for your business, because there's some people who will always keep up with what you're doing just so that they can hate on you. And this happens mostly in the entertainment industry, where you will see a lot of people talking about how they don't like a show and yet they're watching it precisely because they hate it. What they don't understand is that they're actually helping people to make money, because at the end of the day, whether you like it or you don't like it, you're still interacting with that content, you're still supporting that business. And this is exactly what we're seeing with Meghan Markle, because a lot of people talk about how they don't like her, how she's out of touch, and yet they're interacting with her. I mean, if you don't like something, you shouldn't be interacting with it, but most especially you shouldn't be having very strong feelings about it. I always find it so interesting when people say say that something is unrelatable, and yet that is what they are watching. That is the kind of content that they are always interacting with, because deep down they are driven by their desires of wanting to live that kind of life. You always find these people that are complaining about something being out of touch or unrelatable. They never really seek out the content that is relatable to them. And this is one of the reasons why this idea of affordable luxury exists, because a lot of people want things that they cannot have. And this brings us to the third lesson in positioning and differentiation. When I look at Meghan Markle as a brand, I find that she's really been trying to find her footing. And when she started her business, she started with a media brand, Archetypes, the podcast, and then she was trying to be the activist, outspoken Meghan. And then now we have this show on Netflix with Love Meghan, which is a lifestyle brand, and she's trying to show herself as a working mom, a family woman. She's positioning herself as an elegant woman, tries to elevate everyday life. And I do find that she's sort of struggling to try and differentiate herself or position herself. You know, these are things that you learn when you're starting a business. It's not something that you're always getting right. This is why it's always important to try different things. When you're known as a personality, it can be hard, because most times people have a different image of you, and then you are trying to craft a different persona to create a business. That is one of the hardest things to do. When it comes to trying to position yourself or trying to differentiate yourself, it's not something that's very easy. It's something that takes a very long time. That's why you always see a lot of businesses, they just keep on changing their branding. This is why if you are trying to build any business, one of the things that you need to really lock down is your positioning, your branding, your differentiation, so that you don't look like someone who is confused when you go out into the market. Once you're able to craft all these things very clearly, it means that you can actually identify who is your target audience, and you can focus on that, and you can even go exactly where they are. I find that with Meghan in particular, she's really trying to lean into the aspirational aspect of her brand. She's trying to be an aspirational, authentic, working mom. That can be quite complex to pull off. And of course, her own Cinderella story of being an actress to a princess. It's definitely one of those things that really adds in to her storytelling, and that really helps her in whatever she's trying to build. When it comes to choosing the type of business to do, it's always very, very difficult. If you're someone who is in the influencer creation space, that could be akin to choosing a niche. Most times you need to choose something that you're going to be known for, but that is also going to make you money. And right now, Meghan is doing that with her lifestyle brand. Her lifestyle show with Love Meghan is actually in tandem with her lifestyle brand As Ever, where she's going to be selling jams, honey, cake mixes, I think. The show is also helping in promoting the products that she's going to be selling. And that's actually a genius way of doing something, because that is product placement. She's also curating a universe for her company and her brand As Ever. One of the things that she actually had a problem with is the name of her lifestyle brand. It's now called As Ever, but it was initially called American Riviera Orchard. One thing you can learn from this is about when it comes to business, you have to learn about intellectual property. You might have problems with that when you are registering your business. I do find that the name As Ever doesn't really communicate what the brand is going to be about. But with American Riviera Orchard, you could already picture how her brand in that universe could be like. But of course, these are things that if you're trying to get into business, you always learn as you go, especially now that a lot of people are getting into freelancing. The idea of intellectual property is something that is going to be more of a discussion. As a content creator, a video creator, a YouTuber, if someone is editing your own videos, who owns the copyright to that? What happens when you change your editor? Does it mean that the videos that were already edited by this other person, they belong to that person and they can ask you to take down those videos? You know, these are the kind of things you should be thinking about. I also find that something great that Meghan Markle is doing, especially with her businesses, is that she has not tried to reinvent the wheel. She's just decided to go with the business models that have always made sense. This idea of homemaking, of hosting, of making food is something that has always been so successful, and on social media a lot of people attach that to being a traditional wife, which I always find so interesting, because I come from a culture where we cook all of our food, we are always entertaining people. So for me, it's not something that is aspirational, because it's part and parcel of our culture. And with her brand in particular, I think she has borrowed what we are always seeing in the fashion industry, this idea of elevated basics. Essentially what Meghan has done is just take the everyday things that you always have at home and created them using the best of ingredients, and they're homemade, they're organic, they fall into the category of elevated basics. I think this is also an important lesson, because most of the times when you want to start something, a lot of the times you're always hearing people saying you should be original, you should do only original things, but that can actually cage you into not starting, because you're like, oh, I need to be original all the time. But actually what you can do is just look at what is already working and then find a way of adding your own sauce to that. One thing that you always have to remember is that the things that are tried, tested, and successful, they already have a massive audience, and you can always tap into that audience. And then the moment you've already gained your own attention, then you can be able to create whatever you want. This goes back to the first point: attention is currency. Once you have attention on you, then you can create your own opportunities. This is why you're always seeing like a lot of artists, when they get signed into a label, first 1 or 2 albums that they do, they're not the songs that they like, they're not the songs that help them to express who they are. But after they've become very successful, it's when they start doing things that are true to them, because now they have the audience. But of course, this mentality can be very dangerous, because you can find yourself being the kind of person that doesn't want to take a lot of risks. Like a lot of big companies, they just want to do the things that have been tried and tested. It gets to a point where you can be easily forgotten, because if you're just doing what everyone else is doing, it's not really easy for you to stand out. That's why it's really important for you to have a strong personality like Meghan Markle. Even if she's tapping into already existing successful audience or market, she's using her advantage as a personality, as a known personality, to break into that market and to get a market share for herself and her business. You're trying to build a business, you're trying to be the best employee in your own company. I think it's very clear. Attention is currency. There is no bad publicity. Define your positioning and differentiation, and of course, learn from the already existing markets instead of trying to be original. And actually having a curious mind, being a learner. These are some of the most important skills that you need for you to be successful in business.